Welcome to the Peace and Possibilities podcast. This is Julie Bruns, and you are about to be inspired. I am so excited to share my conversations with amazing people from all walks of life who figured out how to be happy, peaceful, and content doing work they love and making the world a better place so that you can see what's possible for your life. I can't wait to hear what you think. Send me an email and let me know one thing you're taking away from this episode. And never forget, anything really is possible. Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Daniela Pierre-Bravo. And Daniela and I have never spoken before. And that's the most fun for me, Daniela, that I don't necessarily know the people that I'm talking to. I just know that they inspire me. And I picked up your book, Earn It. So you wrote this book with Mika Brzezinski. Called Earn It, Know Your Value and Grow Your Career in Your 20s and Beyond. And the reason I picked it up, I was at the library. I love going to the library. I go all the time. Do you? Love it.
I grew up in the library when I came to the States. I didn't have a lot of friends when I first moved, when in like 5th grade. So I went from school straight to the library and would just stay there all day.
Oh, I love it. I'm trying to move my phone. I have been going to the library forever, but I, especially as I'm older and I don't need to, before when I was in school and I had to read all the time for school and do whatever projects and tests, I hated it. But once I was done with college, I was like, oh, I love reading. I just want to read what I want to read, right? And my new thing is whenever we go to a new city, I try to go to the library there. Or I was on a walk yesterday and I was in a suburb I'd never been to in Chicago before, a library. I'm like, I'm going to go into that library. It's like so fun. So I saw your book there, and the reason I picked it up is because I read Mika's other books, Know Your Value and Grow Your Value, several years ago, and I was really about confidence and inspiring people in the workplace, women especially, and I loved them. And then I saw this book, I'm like, oh, another one. And I love that she did it with you for 20s and beyond, because like this is the new generation, and we need to teach you guys how to do what we didn't do well for ourselves when we were in our 20s, right? And I know a little bit about your story. How you grew up in the U.S. and in high school, how you found out you were undocumented, and kind of what your journey was after that a little bit. But I want you to tell the audience so what you do now and how you figured out that this is what you wanted to do. Like, did you know in college? I remember most of your story where you're like, I'm going to be on TV. I don't think you were. I'm going to be on TV one day. I think you just wanted to do some good work. What was it?
I just, first of all, I wanted to have an on the books job, first of all, because I was undocumented and I wanted to be like everybody else. I didn't want, people to make excuses for me. I didn't want my status to limit me in any way. And so I am now a reporter for MSNBC's Morning Joe, and I am an author. I wrote the book with Mika, and I have my second book coming out August 23rd. That's really special for me, and I can't wait for it to come out. But it was kind of a non-linear way to get where I am today. I mean, I started undocumented, as you mentioned, in the middle of a small town in Ohio. And then, I ended up doing this whole thing where I got on this bus and I was trying to get this unpaid internship, and I lied and I said that I lived in New York because I didn't want the hiring managers to make excuses for me, or, saying that, oh, she's not from here. She won't be able to afford moving here in 2 weeks for an unpaid internship. And just the million things that happen, the million things that can happen when you're already at a disadvantage. So I lied and said I lived in New York. I got a phone call from P. Diddy's Bad Boy Entertainment marketing agency that they were looking for an intern. And they called me and they said, can you come in for an interview tomorrow? I was still in the middle of Ohio, studying for an exam. And I said, yes, I'll be there. But again, Julie, I didn't have an ID. I couldn't get on a plane. I couldn't drive myself there. So I ended up just getting on a Greyhound bus that night. I had never been on a Greyhound bus, didn't know how they worked, didn't know that they had like stops in the middle of the night, 18-hour bus ride, 9 stops along the way, got to Port Authority, cleaned up, changed, doing all the things that us girls do to get ready for an interview. And ran to this internship that was unpaid and made it just in time. And they thought I was crazy. They were like, did you know that this was unpaid? Why did you get on a bus for 18 hours? And I just said, I just wanted to show you how much I wanted this opportunity. And so I got that unpaid internship that summer. I was still undocumented. So even if I, had this experience, I didn't exactly know what I was going to do with it. And so I ended up getting, side gigs that paid cash. I looked on Craigslist, they were hiring babysitters, and I worked at a bar and in promotions, basically anything that I could. And then long story short, DACA came out that summer. I ended up getting, I don't know how I got into the NBC Page program, which is a very kind of prestigious program that, it's an entry-level program. I worked at different shows like SNL and Jimmy Fallon, and ended up at MSNBC Morning Joe like 9 years ago as a production coordinator. And I'm still there, Julie. I'm still there, but I pivoted from behind the scenes to on camera as a reporter.
That's so fun. So I think it probably what's resonating with your story the most for me is the you're like, I'll just figure out a way to do it. I grew up in this country. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, but from a really big family. We didn't have any money. And it was really just like, you want that, go figure out how to get it. There was never this, all right, let's sit down and figure out how we're going to make this happen. There were 11 children in my family. So it was like, we don't really have time to sit and talk with you.
Right.
You got to figure it out. So I was like you, I was like, I'll make that phone call. I'll just jump on the bus. I'll jump on the plane. I'll do whatever I need to do to get to the thing I want to get to. And it speaks to so much about your character, obviously. And I don't know if your other siblings are like this too, or were you innately like, I'm going to try, then I'm going to figure it out? Or was there someone behind you cheering you on? Were your parents doing that at all?
My parents were immigrants that were working 2 and 3 jobs. I was the oldest of 5 kids.
Okay.
And I just knew, like many immigrants that come to this country and look at their parents and the sacrifices that they do, that, I have this shot. Yeah. There's not a playbook. There's not a linear way to get from A to Z. And that I just have to take the opportunity that I have to be in this great country and kind of figure it out as I go. But I don't really think my story is that unique. I think that that's the story of a lot of young people in this country, a lot of women of color who just have to roll up their sleeves and just figure it out. And that's exactly why I wrote this new book, because a lot of young women know that they have to earn it, and they know how to earn it. And they're yes girls, and they raise their hand for opportunities, and they work the longest hours, and they have to navigate people's perceptions. And most of them have this duality about their cultureness. So they know how to read people. The bigger problem is that they don't know how to advocate for themselves effectively when the time comes. They, deal with things like feeling overly grateful and I suffer from this too. It's like, you have this one shot. It feels so, fleeting. Like you don't want to mess it up. You don't want to, disrupt the politics and get people mad at you and not to like you. God forbid somebody doesn't like you. So that's why I wrote this new book. And, but I don't think my story is that I think it'll resonate with a lot of people because it's the story of so many young women.
It's a story of so many young women. It's a story of women that don't have everything handed to them on a silver platter. And I'm just speaking of like where I grew up in middle class. I was lower middle class, but I grew up in a middle class, area where there were people. My friends' parents were helping them with everything, and I just didn't know any different. So I just had to, like you say, advocate for yourself. That's why I loved the book with Mika so much, Earn It, because you guys were talking about, like you said, advocating for yourself and being assertive without being labeled, a bad word, whatever it is, but teaching people in your generation, 20s and over, that are out there in the world getting to go on these interviews, these opportunities, and not knowing, like you said, just saying but just be happy to have a seat at the table instead of like, no, wait a minute, I have something to say. It's important. I have this education. I have this experience. I have this idea, whatever it is. And then getting people just to trust that more, getting women especially to trust that more. I commend you for doing that, especially for the people that, for the women that it's going to be a little bit harder for, or which shouldn't be harder for, but they might be experiencing it that way. So that's awesome. Awesome. So what were you doing along the way when you were busting your butt trying to get that internship and then the next job and the next job? Because I'm sure it wasn't easy. What were you doing to remain grateful, but peaceful, happy, and content, and also okay, I don't have that thing I want yet, but in the meantime, I have to work hard, be happy, do all the right things to get to the next level. Did you have practices in place? Something you tell yourself? Did you have mentors? What was that like for you?
Yeah, my mentor didn't really come until I met Mika, but even before that, I was in total survival mode. I was just like getting, figuring out and focusing on like the next gig, the next opportunity. How do I do well at this? So the being like that, I enjoyed the opportunities, right? And just like being a sponge to the environment. But I think that now, as I'm like in my 30s and looking back, I'm just now finding a new level of happiness, a new level of calmness about what I do, where my work kind of speaks for itself now, where I'm not like chasing. I'm letting things come to me because I know that I've earned it. And I think that
Right.
that is the hardest part for us to kind of pivot to, is to know when to stop going from survival mode to actually knowing that we've owned it and earned it, and letting that opportunity and ease. So this is, I do like research when I do these books, in the first book and in the second book. And I interview tons of Fortune 500 CEOs and managers. And the one thing that I've noticed that women and men and leadership have is that they cultivate this sense of ease, right? So they walk into a meeting, and the way that they talk, the way that people feel with them is this ease. And I don't think I had that at the beginning of my career. And it shows authority. Like when you walk into a room and you pull, you show people that you have that ease about yourself, but that doesn't come until you stop living in that like survival mode. And so for me, and there are some practical things that I do, like the day-to-day, like the mindfulness, like we can get really practical on the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. But that stuff comes when you realize that you put in the work. You don't have to live in that survival mode, because that only causes burnout. And I think that, we can take a step back and really talk about like what this the great resignation has caused for a lot of women. And I think that just people are just putting their foot down on being in survival mode and constantly burned out. And they're finally wanting to call the shots and making their own playbook. So at the beginning, it was just survival mode. I didn't have mentors. I didn't have the playbook. It was just figuring out as I went and finding the moments of joy of saying like, wow, I made it into this room where I'm, working at SNL, and this, like, I'm seeing the live show every Saturday and working with the talent. And, I'm in New York, or even before then, I'm living in New York. I'm working for P. Diddy's company. Yes, I'm eating dollar pizzas every day, but like how cool it is to learn from, amazing professionals around me.
It's awesome. I love that you are like still, I'm the same way where I'm in an opportunity that's, whether I made it for myself or not, I'm always like, wow, like this is cool. Like I'm learning more as I'm getting older to take kind of like snapshots of like, this is awesome. Remembering what it is, like being mindful in the moment and like appreciating what's happening there. And like you said, that ease is authoritative. It shows authority. Like you said, it's commanding, but it also comes from confidence. And I think when you're in your 20s and just starting out, even though you should be confident because you've earned your degree, you've earned that job, and you got that job because you have this degree and you have the skills and the capability for it, but you still are nervous. You're like, especially women, they second guess themselves. And when you get a little bit older and you realize all that you bring to the table and you stop second guessing yourself, you have that ease. And the irony is that ease gives you more of all that stuff you want. And you don't have to be chasing and surviving, like you said, as much, because it comes to you, and it's not an accident that it's coming to you, because you're just kind of in it and settled, and it flows easier. So I think that's one of like a big secret that I think it's hard to learn when you're younger. And I think even if you learned it at 25, let's say after you graduated college and got a job, it still wouldn't come off the same way, because you wouldn't have all that wisdom and experience to feed into what's happening. Yeah. So when you I'm sure people ask you for advice all the time. What do you say when they're like, oh, I'm searching for whether they're doing what you do or not, and they just want to have a meaningful career, and how did you get there, and how can I probably fast track? You probably get that question on how you can do it more quickly. What do you tell people? What career advice do you give them?
Well, I think that I am a big believer of not being, so focused on a linear path. I have a mentorship community called Accesso Community that came from a conversation that I had with Mika, because she has grown this amazing platform called Know Your Value. And I wanted something specifically for women of color, Latinas from all different parts of the country who didn't have that access. So I called it Accesso Community. And what we do is have these sort of mini mentoring sessions where we're in a group of like 6 or 7 like-minded women that are going through the same career pain point. And a lot of what I hear is, how do I get to that point, or what do I need to do? And I think women underestimate their own journey. They underestimate their ability to create their own rules. And I think, when I look at my career, there was no linear path to be a reporter. There was no, somebody saying, well, you should be doing this to do this. Like, I had to raise my hand and kind of give it on a platter to my boss and say, can you give me a chance to do this? So I think the one thing that I would advise women and men, we talk about women, but there's so much, I don't want to exclude men in this conversation because we've all lived through the same thing, is, envision that for yourself. I think sometimes as women, we feel like we need that like pat in the back to say, oh, this is a good idea for you. I give you permission to do this. Like, we don't need that permission. And we can like see that career that we want for ourselves unfold. And don't be afraid to try things that your parents didn't do, that your peers didn't do. Like, I think a lot of young women still feel like that burden of like, well, I don't have a mentor, so, I can't get to the next step. I don't want to confuse people. Like, mentors and sponsors are huge, of course, but we don't have to wait for that person to kind of show us the lay of the land of our next step. And I, when I didn't have mentors, I found many mentoring moments with the people that, I was in a room with. Like, I didn't have to go to them and there'd be like a verbal contract of like, oh, you're my mentor. Like, I would be learning from them. I had mentors I didn't even know that they were my mentors. And so I think that we just have to take the reins more. And I think, to your point of confidence, like, yeah, I agree. Like, I think a lot of women are confident to some extent, especially women of color, because we need that confidence to just like put our head, our names in the ring when we don't have anybody else to do it for us. But it's that sort of self-confidence, because I feel like sometimes we always look at ourselves through the eyes of somebody else. I think that's what, that's why I call this book The Other, because the other is just seeing yourself through the eyes of somebody else. And in some ways, at the beginning of our career, that gives us success because it allows us to understand social cues. It allows us to understand how to chameleon our way through different environments. But the problem is that when we get to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th year of our careers, we're still in that mode, that reactionary mode of like, oh, what does somebody think of me? And I have to say something to appease this person. I need to make them feel comfortable. And that's when we lose our confidence.
Yes.
And so I think the real advice for confidence is to just see yourself through your own eyes, and to not be afraid to create that playbook, because nobody's going to create it for you.
I love that. And I love what you said about the mentoring. Like, I was the same way. I didn't even really, mentoring, I read a lot of books. I don't think the books were my mentors. I was never really in a job where I said I have to find a mentor, probably until maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And even then, I didn't have a regular mentor. I was mentoring other people and younger people just leaving, getting out of college, et cetera. But I didn't, everything I created for myself was just kind of what you were doing, figuring out as I was going. And what you said, have mentor moments. You don't need a person to tell you what to do. Just in the moment, figure out what that mentoring tip is all about. And that person doesn't even know you need to know they're a mentor. You just keep learning from everyone you're in the room with. And those are your mentors. You don't need a formal one. And I know it's more of a common thing now with people graduating from college, women and men as well. But it's not necessary, like you said. And if you can't find one, now you're also in that survival mode. Like, you think you need it to get to the next level, and you don't necessarily.
Yeah, and I don't want to underestimate. Like, I wrote this book for women of color, so that's very much ingrained in my mind. Like, there are so many obstacles for women of color, especially, or women who just don't have that know-how or have and we do need sponsors at some point. Like many men, like that whole like mentoring yourself was really useful at the beginning of my career and getting my leg up at the beginning. But people like Mika were like vital for me to get to the next step. She would be we need people sometimes to advocate for us when we're not in the room.
Yes.
And so sponsors are super important. And, that's another question I get asked, like, how do I find that? It's like, earn trust. And this is something that Mika has always said, and it's in our first book, build trust, and then friendships will follow.
Yes.
And you can do it in like the most like menial way,
Yes.
And I talk about this in the first book, my way to gain Miko's trust at the beginning, which eventually to set myself apart from like the dozens of production coordinators, assistants, interns, pages, like my way to differentiate from that revolving door was to get her coffee right. Like I'm not kidding. Like that was it for me. Yeah. And obviously like, as our relationship grew professionally, my value was more than just bringing her like the best coffee that she's had in her life at like 3:30 in the morning. But at the beginning, like that was the thing that I made sure I got like super right. And I would like find a way to get Starbucks open like before the time that it was supposed to be open. And they like hated me there because I was like knocking on the door before 4 a.m. every morning so that I could get like the black-eyed misto extra hot, extra foam, Tamika in her hands as the moment she like walked into 30 Rock. But that, I know it sounds silly, but like that was my way to gain her trust. And I think for anybody that's listening, like a really practical piece of advice is to know the person that you're at, that you hope to be your sponsor and mentor. Don't just like have one informational, like, and say, can you be my mentor? Like, let that come naturally, build the trust. Mentorship. I found this quote from Dia, who was in our first book, Dia Sims, who used to be the president of Bad Boy Entertainment. Mentorship is a two-way street. You have value to offer, whether you're young and like, I don't want to be stereotypical, but you have like value to add in the social media space, or just your view on whatever it is that your generation like sees, like you can give that value back to whoever you're asking to be a mentor or sponsor. So I wouldn't underestimate that bit.
I totally agree. And I love what you said about earning it. It really is the small things. And people, when I was going up in my career, people would say like, well, I'm not going to really do all this well because when I get there, I'm going to do that really well. Well, if you can do the little things really well and earn people's trust when you don't have a ton of responsibility, how are they ever going to hand you more? You have to prove it and earn it early with little things. It's as simple as showing up on time, showing up early, knowing that people can count on you, no matter how small the count on you task is. Little by little, you build that, and then you're earning. No one ever has to second guess you because they know that they can trust you and they can.
And also, you become a better leader. Like I remember talking to Kathy Engelbert, the former CEO of Deloitte, in Earn It, and she mentioned that she was, I think it was derivatives or some part of the company that she didn't like exactly like was obsessed with, but it made her a better leader because she could better understand the needs of that department when she became a leader. So I think, not only just do it for yourself in the moment and to learn and to earn it and to gain people's trust, but to know that you're going somewhere and that looking back on the tasks or projects that you did and knowing them intimately will make you a better leader.
Yes. It's very also very important. That I don't think that's taught enough either. It's like know every aspect of it. I was reading an article the other day about mentors actually, and CEO of he was a big executive at Firestone, and he would sweep the floors, and they would say, you don't need to sweep the floors if the other workers there, you own the place or something like that. And it's like, but if they don't know that I care about it as much as they care about it, they're not going to give me the same effort. And it's mine. Why wouldn't I be respecting it the same way? And it goes a long way for other people to see that you care just as much, and you're not just sitting off to the side letting everyone else do the hard work, and your heart's in it, and you're earning it too. I don't think you ever stop earning it. You can sit back and have a little bit more ease later, but it's a mindset, and that mindset never really goes away if you're a great leader.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So I have two final questions for you. You can answer them in this order, or you can flip them. It's up to you. What's the greatest gift that you, Daniela, offer the world? So you have to brag a little bit. And what's one new thing you'll be taking away from our conversation today?
I think for me, what I bring is just truth telling, whether it's my personal story, which was very icky at first. And, I wasn't so used to speaking about me and what I've gone through, or whether it's the stories that I put on the air for Morning Joe. Like, I think for me, it's not enough to do a story and, move on. I want to find the truth to it, because at the end of the day, I want people to feel seen and heard. And I think that, my gift is being a storyteller and doing it through that way. What am I going to take from this conversation, Julie? I feel like we've talked about so much.
No.
I don't know. I just feel like community. I feel like even speaking to you, Julie, like connecting with other like-minded individuals and knowing that we can network, just by people that are doing the same thing. I think sometimes we get so bogged down and like, oh, we need to network up and we need to like, focus on, people within my own company. Like, I love this new way of like meeting people online and like just coming together and forging a professional relationship and sharing. And I think that even women that work in corporate America, you can totally do that. Like, don't underestimate like your network of sisters and other parts of your industry outside of your company.
I love that. I know community is so important. And I think finally we're getting to a place where women, it's always been important for women to support other women, but now it's like in the forefront, like we need to do this first before we're doing all the other stuff, because we don't have enough people advocating for us when we're younger, and depending on where we're from, especially. But as we grow in our careers, we always think we're trying to match, go up, network up, that guy up there that can give me the raise or whatever. No, if we can do all this more, that climb, no matter what it is, or you want to stay lateral, is easier and better. It's more nurturing, and then we're all helping each other too, and we're learning from each other, and that's what it's all about. So I really appreciate your time today. I'm excited to check out your new book. It's coming out in August, you said?
August 23rd, but it's available for pre-order now.
Okay. And then if people want to get involved with the community you talked about, what's the, I know Mika has one and you have one. What are those?
Yeah. So mine is Instagram is the best way to do it. We're actually doing a book club that's starting like very soon about the others. So it's a first view of the book, and it's kind of, I'm melding it with career growth sessions. The handle is at Acceso Community. So ACCESO Community. And my handle on Instagram is at D Pierre-Bravo.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. I'm very excited for you. I know, because I had my own book from last year. That was my first book. What an undertaking it is, and how proud you should be of it. I know, like, I just, when I think of it, it's like one of my proudest things I've done in my life.
I've never had kids, but
right? It's just
my baby for now.
And I just encourage you to keep talking about it, keep doing the work you're doing, and keep sharing your stories, because they matter, and getting things out there like we're doing today, it matters, and it makes a difference. And congratulations on being an awesome example for just women in general. So I'm not even going to say younger women. I'm just going to say women in general. It doesn't really matter how old you are. You're making a difference.
Thank you, Julie. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you loved this episode. Don't forget to like us, subscribe, review, and share it. I hope you were truly inspired. And for a little more inspiration, don't forget to pick up my book, Peace, Possibilities, and Perspective: 8 Secrets to Serenity and Satisfaction in Your Life and Career. I can't wait to get you love in your life.